So you want to learn how to become an interior designer. You might be obsessed with looking through magazines and watching home renovation shows, and you think, I can do that, or I'd love to do that. In this video, I'll show you how to make that dream a reality. I've been designing interiors for nearly 30 years, and after all that time, the buzz of a new project has never waned. So let's talk about interior design as a career. It's an exciting career that's led me to work in different places around the world, allowed me to open a design store and design interiors and be featured in magazines and TV. And yes, it looks super glamorous, and some parts of it are, but it's also very challenging. But I love it, and I'm thrilled that you're considering the profession. So you may be a few years into your career and you are thinking of a change, or maybe you're just starting out, either fresh out of school or college, or even applying to design schools. If you do want to embark on a career in interior design, you probably first need to consider what kind of design you might want to pursue. If you have a flair for colors and fabrics, love looking for furniture, accessories and artwork, and consider revamping a tired space a challenge, you might want to consider a career as an interior decorator. But if you're willing and able to put in the time and effort to study design in college and or attend design school to at least a bachelor's degree level, you might want to consider a career as an interior designer. In some countries, a license is required to practice, so there may be even more exams and professional practice that you are required to complete after you have graduated. So let me explain the difference. Let's talk about the differences between an interior designer and a decorator. An interior designer really has more in common with an architect than they do with a decorator. Firstly, a formal education is required, and usually this is a 3 to 4 year degree and could even be a master's. An architect who really deals with the whole building, they focus very much on the internal space. So they're interested in things like space planning, how well the space functions, and how it complies to code. So often interior designers will be involved in projects like restaurants and cinemas and public spaces where they'll have to actually make sure that how people move throughout the space is as optimized as possible, as well as complying with the codes such as safety regulations, accessibility regulations, and so on. So aesthetics is just really a small part of what they can do. Let's just have a look in depth. They'll do some architectural visualizations, so they'll be able to draw their ideas in 2D and 3D ways and be able to translate that to a client. They'll also have some construction knowledge. They'll have some knowledge of how things are built and be able to communicate with the contractors and architects quite directly. Furniture, fittings and equipment is the area that you would most commonly think of as a designer, but they don't just select furniture. They'll also select things that will fit completely into the space. So if it was a commercial space, they would be able to select the equipment that is suitable. For example, in a restaurant, they would know about things like grease traps and voltage and be able to communicate that with the trades on site. They're also trained in sustainability and the environmental impact that their clients may be interested in. So this is becoming very much a focus for businesses in particular. And interior designers may be asked to select fittings and furniture that has a very low environmental impact. They'll also be trained in the building codes for the industry that they are in and for the area that they are in. For example, a lot of interior designers end up specializing in particular areas, for example, health, hospitality, commercial spaces, and so on. They'll be very knowledgeable about the codes that apply for their particular specialty. They're also interested in accessibility, health, and safety, and interior designers generally have to do some sort of compliance in terms of where they live. So there may be laws in place of which commercial spaces, in particular public spaces, have to comply. So they'll also have some knowledge on lighting and automation. And as you probably know already, you can really create lots of different effects with lighting. And automation in interiors is starting to become more and more important as people are more aware of the advantages that automation can have. They'll also have a look at acoustics. So often interior designers will have to consider the floors above and below, as well as the impact that their designs have on the external environment. And then they'll do the color and creative direction. So they'll not only choose the colors of the palette of the internal area, but they'll also often do the creative direction for the whole space. They may be working very closely with branding and so on, and making sure that they comply with the branding guides of the commercial space that they're working with. We've touched on this before, but they will be able to draw in 2D and 3D, and usually on computer. And they'll be also very interested in, as we mentioned before, in the spaces. So let's have a look at what interior decorator does. So formal education generally is not required. They focus on the presentation or look of a room, and they will consult on things like color, so things like wall colorings and fabric colorings, and select materials that fit in with a color palette that they've selected. They'll also specialize in textiles and fabric choices, and they'll also think about textures and how things work together. Finally, they'll be shopping for furniture and accessories and specifying those. You can see there's much more focus on the look of the room. So I hope that's much clearer in the differences in the jobs that interior designers and decorators does. And of course, there is an overlap to this. And there are some interior decorators who have been around for a while or have been trained in 2D and 3D design and can do some of this knowledge as well. They'll also lean into their contractors and pick up quite a lot of construction knowledges, and they probably will have knowledge about the building codes. But the main point here is that they aren't required to know about those things, and they will just focus generally on how a room looks and feels. It's entirely possible to become an interior decorator first and then return to school to become an interior designer. You'll probably have a thorough grounding in design fundamentals and a practical approach, which is never a bad thing. And if you're considering going back to school, make sure that the courses include some of the following or most of the following. You need to understand the principles of interior design. So you need to understand how interiors work and best practices. Next, design history is extremely important. You'll learn things about not only Western design history, but also history of other cultures and design there and how they could apply to your interiors. You'll also learn color theory and how it applies to interiors. It can change moods and energies in rooms. You'll also learn about materials, fittings, and equipment, and be able to specify them for specialist interiors. You'll learn things like visualization, so both by hand and computer design. You'll learn perspective drawing, rendering, and computer-aided design, and both 2D and 3D. You'll have experience in drawing and composition and making perspectives and rendering. This may be both by hand or with a computer and includes both 2D and 3D design. You'll understand interior lighting and automation and how they can be applied to contemporary interiors. You'll also understand sustainability and sustainable building design and be able to apply it to the interiors that you design. Finally, you'll need to know building codes and standards for your country or state. Another thing that is important is business practices. I'd be looking for a course that covers how interior design practices are run. If you've done your research and committed to becoming either an interior decorator or a designer and started applying to schools, connect with local interior designers by buying them a coffee and asking about their training and career. Get some insight into what they actually do. You might want to check the rankings of potential schools and visit them on their open day. Ask around and talk to existing students. Going to an interior design school is an exciting opportunity. You'll meet some really creative people, and the experience you'll have will open you up to the possibilities of design. It can also be challenging as you'll be asked to present your designs in front of your cohorts and your teachers. So if you're up for all of that, In addition to all this book learning and training, there are a few other skills that interior designers should have up their sleeves. Learning communication skills and storytelling goes a long way. You will have developed this in design school, as you'll have to stand up in front of your fellow students and colleagues and explain your design and process. Effective communication skills lands you job interviews and promotions. It helps you explain your concepts to clients. Later on in your career, if you choose to go it alone or go into a partnership, you'll have to have business skills, including financial management, time and organizational management, and project or design management skills. Completing some business courses, as boring as they might be, will be useful because ultimately you'll be a business owner. In my training and career, my interior design studies covered the design part, but I had to lean into my business training to be able to complete projects and run my business. Finally, interior designers have some very specific technical knowledge. They need to understand things like sustainability and building codes and be able to talk to architects, contractors, and trade professionals. They have to be able to translate complex ideas into drawings, which are primarily completed in CAD or computer-aided programs, such as AutoCAD, or BIM, or Building Information Modeling, such as Revit or ArchiCAD. Nowadays, an understanding of skill in 3D rendering is important so clients can visualize ideas and concepts. Now that you've learned the difference between an interior designer and a decorator, and you understand the difference in training between them, get a feel of what it is like to do some of the work of an interior designer by checking out my mood board video. The link's in the description. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.